There's not a single aspect of this case that should stand in any court. But where do you appeal right now? To the New York Appellate Division, which is just as radical? And it's not just this case. Look at all the shade, all the craziness around Fannie Willis, right? That case. You look at Jack Smith and the FBI doctoring documents and setting up staging photos and then leaking it to the Washington Post. The classified documents that end up on the front page of the Washington Post. That's fine. Each one of these things wouldn't stand. If we did this to, meaning conservatives, some sort of Republican did this to Obama, it would never end. It would be a perpetual story, and rightfully so. And yet, hey, as long as it's against a conservative, as long as it's against Trump, who's up against that machine, we're going to allow these things to happen. It's not like one of these things doesn't have any serious hair on it, right? They're all shady as hell, and yet it doesn't matter. And our mainstream media almost refuses to cover it. They won't talk about these things. My father, in many cases, is gagged. I mean, think about that. First Amendment is kind of the First Amendment, right? It's a big one for us. The former president of the United States is not allowed to talk about the facts of the case because, if people actually heard that from him, they'd realize just how much, BS is in all of these things. That should trouble a lot of people. You think it stops with Trump? Think about that. If they can do it to arguably one of the most, out there, most powerful people in the world, a bank account to be able to fight, a base to push it, venues to be a soapbox to speak from. If they can do it to him, who can't they do it to? But more importantly, if they will so flagrantly and so corruptly do it to him, who won't they do it to? That's the question we have to be asking. Is anyone safe? And it's like COVID. People going blindly along. No, it's going to be different this time. I'm like, really? That's what you've got out of this?
But if they put the Republican candidate who was leading in the polls, all things equal, he becomes president again in November. If they put him in jail right before the Republican convention on fake charges stemming from a rigged trial, they're kind of pushing violence, aren't they?
Listen,
how do they expect people to respond? Nothing like that has ever happened.
In the reality, you have to be careful even how you talk about that.
No,
right?
They are pushing violence.
They clearly
violence.
are. But again, nothing should surprise us, right? The star witness of this case is someone who lied before every branch of Congress, was disbarred, lied to banks, lied to wives, lied to the press. But we're expected to believe that he actually told the truth in this one instance, right? That's who they hang their hat on because it doesn't matter. When it's rigged the way it is,
freaks me out.
It doesn't matter.
We're moving toward something ugly, and I don't want that.
No one does. But they're not going to let it play out. Do you think they'll ever take their foot off the gas? No, it's not. They've gotten away with it for years.
How should people respond, do you think?
I think, honestly, the reality is everyone has to get involved.
Yeah.
And again, it's both sides. You have to have, people, running for office. And I'm not talking about president or Congress, run for your school boards. That's perhaps the thing that's most important to me. Frankly, there's a component of me that I don't want to win the presidency if we don't have Congress and the Senate, because I'll probably be up on charges again, and we'll get to go through impeachment, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, for the next 4 years. I don't think that's a great place to be, but I think, apathy has caused us a lot of problems, especially on the conservative side. Where, hey, we run businesses and we do these sorts of things, and we want to spend time with our families, and all noble things and important. But we have to take the initiative to get involved at every level of these things, because the left has taken over every major institution in our country that controls. What they've done in education, manipulating our children, what they've done in entertainment, oftentimes the same thing. It can't stand if we actually want to have a future. Our kids, they graduate, there's high schools with higher districts, no one can read or do math, but they know the 4,376 genders. And I imagine since this interview started, there's probably another 15 that I haven't included that, so I don't want to be labeled as, whatever, a gender bigot by not including them, but that's the last I've been able to keep track of. We just live in perilous times.
It does seem kind of heartening. I think he raised more money in the hours after the verdict than anyone's ever raised. How much he raised?
It's over, I think, $38 million that, in the first couple hours. Small dollar donors, and then there was a bunch of big dollar donor stuff. That's what's interesting. There are tech VC guys, respected guys, that, Hillary donors and even probably Biden donors that are like, okay, I've seen enough. stroking 6 and 7 figure checks now, because I think people who are watching closely enough truly understand just how far we have fallen, just how close we are perhaps to that fulcrum point where there's a point of no return, right?
Yes.
And I think if we ever let it get there, there's no question in my mind that the Democrat elite, they'd maintain and seize that power, and it'll happen like all sort of communist nations, and that's where we're at. And I think people see that, and people who may not even agree with Trump on everything, and you don't have to agree with Trump on anything. I obviously agree with him on everything, Tucker, as the dutiful son. But
it's reached a level of principle, though.
Yeah, but it's like, again, name a metric where we're better off under Joe Biden. We're on the brink of World War III with the world's largest nuclear superpower by volume of nuclear capable ballistic missiles. Like, I don't know. We're going to keep funding that. We're okaying a guy that was a former weirdo actor to send the U.S. made missiles into Russia, provoking that, I guess. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's the next distraction, right? COVID was the distraction for 2020 to allow them to manipulate things. Maybe World War III is the distraction, for this election cycle.
Some of us called this a year ago.
Yeah,
the senile man can't win. They're going to bring us to war. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I don't say that lightly, but I also don't say it I don't know. Would I be at all surprised? Not even. I think it's lunacy. I think it's crazy. But do I think they would do it? 100%. 100%.
Do you think, last question, but it's just, and I might be skipping ahead, but I don't think we're far from, we're at war with Russia.
Oh, of course.
If we're targeting
that whistleblower talking about the boots on the ground, I mean, I've never seen a whistleblower disappear that fast in my life.
Yeah, you wonder
why. I wonder why. Huh? It's almost like it's happening.
But they would need, the military's in very tough shape, and recruitment is way down. No one wants to join the training military, understandably. Yeah. Now they're talking about, well, who would, right?
Well, why would you? Who's gonna? The guys you'd want fighting a war for you, good, patriotic, red-blooded Americans. They don't want to go report to Trans Admiral, not because if the Trans Admiral was Patton, maybe they'd do it.
Yeah.
The Trans Admiral ain't Patton.
No.
Okay. The Trans Admiral is only an admiral because they're trans, not because they're competent or capable, and it doesn't matter.
It's grotesque.
But a big part of signing up for that and possibly dying for your country is actually believing in the things that you're fighting for. That's the basics of patriotism.
That's exactly.
And if you don't believe in those things and you understand that you're going to be vilified, you're going to be forced to not learn how to shoot but do diversity training. Why on earth would you do that? I wouldn't.
And that's the problem they're facing. And so, the one solution was take illegal aliens and put them in the military, so we could have
or flood our borders and put them in the voting roster, and that's another way to make up power because you've lost other demographics that were reliable voters.
But they're also talking about the draft. You're hearing that all of a sudden. Well, maybe we need a draft.
Yeah, so we can be in never-ending wars. Again. What no one's articulated to me, and I kind of do this now, feels like, for a living, no one's articulated what does victory in Ukraine look like. I don't know what it means.
I don't know.
Is it just perpetual death of Ukrainians and Russians until they're all wiped out and BlackRock comes in there and takes over all the farmland? I mean, is that what it is? Because feels like that's what it is to me.
They're already selling off land in Ukraine to foreign investors, and they will flood Ukraine with third world immigrants, and Ukraine will not exist in 50 years. There'll be no Ukrainian nation. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.